Okay, today what we're going to talk about is ERP system management. And the key concepts that we're going to talk about today is, first we're going to talk about application architecture, then we're going to talk about application framework, then we're going to look at concurrent processing and the key element of this in an ERP system. Then we're going to talk about the application layer, and then finally we're going to look at schemas. So today's lecture is going to be very specific to one particular vendor, and the vendor that we're going to look at specifically is Oracle's Release 12 e-Business Suite. Now, over the last several years, Oracle has purchased other major ERP vendors. So this architecture that we're going to talk about today will apply to those vendors as Oracle merges them into Oracle Fusion in the next few years. Also, some of these concepts are actually already being used by JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, and Siebel. As we talked about previously when we looked at the historical perspective of ERP, one of the things that we looked at was the progression of the architecture from mainframe to an N-tier architecture. Oracle today uses an N-tier architecture. So what that means is that you have your desktop, and then there's the mid-tier. And the mid-tier for Oracle is where the key elements of the e-business suite take place. And then finally, we're going to have the Oracle database here. So it's real important to first understand that the mid-tier is where all of the application stuff is taking place. And it has a dual role. It provides the services and the processes to manage the system, but it also stores the business logic that communicates between the desktop and the database. So let's talk about the mid-tier in a little bit more detail. In Oracle's Release 12, there are two Oracle homes, and an Oracle home is where the Oracle binary executables are stored. There are two Oracle homes that live in the mid-tier. The first one is called the 10.1.3 home, and the second one is the 10.1.2 home. In the 10.1.3 home, that is where all of the major services for an e-business suite are started. So this is called your instop. And the 10.1.2 is where the forms reside. This is where the forms executable lives. And this is the reason for this break is that some of the technology that's in the 10.1.2 had yet to be migrated to the 10.1.3 Oracle home. We are merging to a single Oracle home in the mid-tier. So when we talk about the 10.1.3 home, what we're talking about is that all the OC4J forms instances run out of the 10.1.3 home, and that is where all of the information that are the business logic is being served up to the desktop. If a forms-based application is required, it comes through and it talks to the 10.1.2 home using the FRM web executable. So this is kind of the brief architecture of what we're talking about. Now let's talk about the application framework, because this is a key part of how Oracle is integrating all of the other vendors into Oracle Fusion going forward. In 11i and in R12, up to a point, Oracle used an HTML-based application or a framework called self-service applications. It's not a forms-based interface. It doesn't use any of the forms-based tools. It is a pure HTML and JavaScript language that is used to build the information, and it's dynamically generated, and it operates through a web server connection, which is a part of the 10.1.3 home. And that is how that is the basic overall characteristics of how the architecture and the framework work together to help deliver forms and interfaces to the user to access the business logic that is stored in the mid-tier and get to the data in the database. The next section that is very critical to understanding ERP system management is concurrent processing. What is concurrent processing? Concurrent processing is really the reporting characteristics. So you need to extract information out of the database. You would do that in an ERP system from Oracle through the concurrent processing request. These requests can be scheduled, they're executed on the system, and they're controlled by a concurrent manager. And these executables are registered within the Oracle application itself. So one of the key areas we're going to look at in the application technology layer are 4 key elements. And the first one is the AD top. And in the application technology layer, the AD top are the utilities used to help manage your Oracle application. So the key executables that you would use under this top would be AD patch, AD admin, AD control, and AD merge. Those would be some of the key words or key things that you would use in your ERP system management. The next would be FND underscore top. FND is basically the application object library. This is one of the key application tops in the Oracle's application suite that helps manage and maintain common objects throughout the system. The next one would be the AU top. And this is the application utilities where you would use common utilities throughout the application. And then finally, the AK top. And this is the common modules top that allows, again, Oracle's applications to have a common area to go look at. So one of the key things that we've looked at today is that we've looked at how Oracle has laid out their N-tier architecture for their e-business suite. But one of the key things to understand is a little bit more detailed in the mid-tier. And that is the architecture or the file system of the middle tier. So one of the things that I wanted to drop here on the board today to give you kind of a contextual understanding of how Oracle's applications are laid out from a file system perspective. So in Oracle application, you can have multiple configurations for your architecture. So in this example that I'm going to write up on the board, we're looking at a single node environment where both the mid-tier and the database tier are on the same server. But in other situations, you can break it up and have them on multiple servers and configurations. So first you have your database tier. And so basically you have two areas in the file system for the database. You have the apps stage area and you have the tech stage area. This is where all of your application data is stored. So this is where your data files and all of your data files related to your database would store. And the tech area, that is where the executables for your Oracle database would reside. Then you would have your inst top, as we talked about earlier. And then you would have your Apple top. Now again, your inst top really sits in between your database and your Apple top. So this is where all of the management of your mid-tier takes place, and this is how information is served up from the database through the forms or the application framework by accessing the Apple top. So this is in between the two. But what you have here in your Apple top is you have your Apple or your application stage area, and you have your tech stage area. The tech stage area is your 10.1.3 and your 10.1.2 Oracle homes. But under here is where your Apple top, and this is where all of the files related to your application system reside. So you're going to have your apps area, which are all your application tops, and then you're going to have a common area that all of them use. So as you can see, as we've developed this over time, what we are building is a file system tree-like structure where this is how the database is laid out on the file system. This is how the application tier or the application top is laid out. And then you have the inst top, which is the instance top in between both of them. So these are the concepts that we've talked about so far. Now the other key thing to understand about Oracle applications is their schema architecture. Oracle's applications has a schema called apps, and it has access to all of the e-business suite data model. It is analogous to the system schema within the database. The apps schema is responsible for all of the environment variable names and owns all of the apps code. And the app schema is installed for every product group. So what are installed as a part of those product groups? So packages and procedures would be an example. They would be owned by apps. Now, since apps is like a super schema, you have all of your base product schemas, like a general ledger area or a fixed assets area. And those particular areas of schema own the tables and the sequences that are related to those particular tops. So what we've done today is we've taken a look at how Oracle organizes their schemas. We've looked at the application architecture, looking at it from a historical perspective up to how Oracle does it today. We looked at the framework and how they have moved their framework into more of a JavaScript and HTML based. We've looked at how important concurrent processing is to generate data out of your ERP system. And then we've looked specifically at the application technology layer that Oracle uses to manage their ERP systems.